Hey guys, it's Mike. We're going to go ahead and look at what Samsung introduced today, which was the Galaxy Gear S3 smartwatch. Take a look at what Samsung introduced today, which is the new Gear S3 smartwatch. I do not have enough followers yet for Samsung to be sending me early release copies. So I have to sort of go by my experience with previous Gear watches and their press releases that are out. So I'm just going to give you my first impressions of this. That said, I have not touched the product yet, and it doesn't look like it's going to be out until probably the November or December time frame. So let's take a look at this real quick. First, it is a beautiful watch. I didn't expect it to be any less. It looks very similar to my Gear S2. They kept the round face, and I very much like that. I think that was one of the most defining features of the watch. And it's got the rotating bezel still, which makes it easy to control. So let's go ahead and take a look inside this thing. Again, it's a beautiful, beautiful timepiece. Okay, so looking here, we got some nice, of course, beauty shots. One of the things I did find interesting, by the way, is they've renamed the product line just a little tiny bit. So whereas before you used to have the Gear S2, and then you had the Gear S2 Classic, and the main difference being the Gear S2 had more of a futuristic high-tech look and proprietary wristbands. In other words, any wristbands you wanted to change had to come directly from Samsung. They had a kind of a proprietary clasp mechanism. And then you had the S3 Classic, which looked more like a traditional wristwatch, and it used standard off-the-shelf 20 millimeter bands. So I've noticed with the S3, they've changed it now for the S3 Frontier, and of course, there's still the S3 Classic, which is, I've always liked the Classic model anyway. Part of which is I like being able to get my own wristbands and not rely on a particular vendor. And second, I just happen to like, I'm sort of a watch collector, so I happen to like the look of a traditional watch. But what they've done by renaming the base model the S3 Frontier is they've repositioned it for active lifestyles. And I did notice they've also toned down the futuristic look a bit, so it still has a bit more of a watch look to it. But they position it more for outdoor people, so it has a rubber band, rubber wristband, as opposed to the proprietary bands that came with it. Also, it does use off-the-shelf bands now, so you can get the base model, or the Frontier in this case, and still be able to get off-the-shelf bands. The Classic, of course, retains its ability to use off-the-shelf bands. The thing Samsung has done with these S3 watches is they've actually made them bigger. So whereas the S2 was, I believe, 42 millimeters, the S3 is now 46 millimeters. So it's much more, I guess if I was going to compare it with my traditional wristwatches, it's much more in the range of my Rolex Submariner. Some of the outdoorsy watches I've got that are big. Now, I do like a big wristwatch because I've got a whole bunch of them in my collection, but they are difficult sometimes to put underneath a shirt cufflink. So it may not necessarily be the best watch if you don't like big watches. That said, there is no more smaller one, so that the S3 is just much larger to start with. They've included, of course, some new watch faces that you can put on it. They kept the rotating bezel, and they've also kept the ability they also kept like a cellular model, so you can make phone calls directly from the watch, completely standalone from your phone, which is the model I have, of course, on the S2, and I've reviewed that before. But one thing they brought back is the ability to make calls from your wrist over Bluetooth. Now that bothered the heck out of me when the S2 came out, and that's one of the reasons I went with the cellular model. Because if you went back to the early days of the original Samsung Gear watch and the Gear 2 watch, not S2, but Gear 2, you could use them as a Bluetooth phone, and I really liked that. And then when the S2 came out, I'm not exactly sure why, but they dropped the ability to make phone calls. And the main reason was the non-cellular version of the S2 did not have a speaker. So even if you wanted to answer the phone, your watch would show you the phone call coming in, and you could answer it, but then you had to pull your phone out of your pocket, which I thought was the most insane idea I ever heard. I didn't like it. So yeah, if you wanted to make phone calls over Bluetooth, you had to, or either cellular or Bluetooth, you had to get the cellular model because it had the obligatory speaker in there so you could hear the other party talking. So they brought that back. So that was a nice thing. It shows that Samsung is occasionally listening to their customers, and they brought back that feature because I'm sure I wasn't the only one complaining about it. It retains its water resistance, and it's still running Tizen, which is nice because it's got great battery life. And we'll talk about apps in a second. It's always been a weak point of Tizen that there wasn't quite as many apps. So here they're talking about 4 days of battery life. Now, the S3 is going to have better battery life than the S2 simply by virtue of the fact that it's larger and they put a larger battery in it. I think it's, I don't really want to guess. I think it's like a 348 milliamp. So I said I didn't want to guess, then I guessed. But I think that's right. They kept the same sensors. They still got the heart rate sensor, but they've added a few new sensors here, such as an accelerometer, gyro barometer, so you'll be able to tell the weather from your watch. The ambient light was always there. And they've also got an altimeter in it now too, so you can tell how high the mountain is that you're climbing on. Sorry, and I was wrong on the battery before. It's 380 milliamps. So those are kind of nice. It's not sure. Here's the thing. If you saw my last video, I decided to keep my S2 and not return it, knowing this is coming out. And if it's really not going to be released before the end of fourth quarter, I'm kind of glad I kept it. But will I get one of these? Maybe. They've added some additional memory into this watch. It's still got 4 gigs, but now it's 768 megabytes of RAM as opposed to the 512 in the previous model. There's a new version of Gorilla Glass here, which is designed just for watches. So it's more scratch resistant and more for something you're wearing on your wrist. And let's see what else we got here. Let's go over to the design page. Again, I really like the look of this watch. I think that's beautiful. And they're shipping it. That's what you're looking at here is the Frontier model. Switch over here, and there's your classic model of the watch. Just super elegant. It looks just like a normal wristwatch. The other thing they've added, it looks like they've enhanced the always-on display. So, of course, that's going to come at a bit of a price for your battery life. Now, there's an always-on display on the S2, but what it basically does is it dims the screen and just leaves sort of a ghost of what the watch looks like. And it's possible because of these AMOLED displays where the only thing that turns on is the pixels you're looking at. So the pixels that are black essentially turn off. So they can get away with that. And it's apparently now there's a multicolor version of this, so the watch will still look like a standard watch even when you're not looking at it if you choose to use that option. And that's what they're talking about here. Comes with different watch faces built in. See, I really like these traditional looks. So you got the Chronograph Plus, the Urban Classic. Frontier's got its own outdoorsy looking face. And then you got all these digital faces, which I guess if you're working out is okay. I wouldn't want to wear them all the time. To me, it just screams geek. Again, just reiterating, you can now get any band you want. They have changed the band size to 22 millimeters, which makes sense considering the larger body for the watch itself, up to 46 millimeters. If I go to experience here, this is where it gets interesting. Man, this is basically what I was talking about before. You can still make the phone calls from your wrist. I like that. And Samsung Pay. Now, this is kind of the proverbial thorn in my side, right? Because they had Samsung Pay promised with the S2. I'm still waiting for it. Apparently, it's in beta now on the Bluetooth-only models, but those of us with the cellular models, we don't get it. So there you are, right? They say it's going to ship with the watch. We'll see. Now, the other thing I noticed, it does have the NFC, Near Field Communication technologies. That'll work on most NFC card readers. But I've noticed they've also got magnetic secure transmission, which has been in the Note phones for a while. And what that means is you can go up to machines that don't necessarily support NFC-type payments, and it'll work, because what it essentially does is it emulates a card swipe for the magnetic readers for as long as they're still with us anyway. And I've used it with some success with the Note 5 and the Note 7. I don't know if the S2 has that built in. I'm going to have to check on that. If it doesn't, that would be something new to the S3 itself. Still got the music player in it. And now one thing that's new is the App Store can actually be downloaded directly from the S3. So like on my S2, even though it's a standalone cellular version, to install apps, I still got to go back to my Galaxy Note phone or pretty much any other Samsung or Android phone you have and download the apps from there. Side note, I have heard that they're beta testing a version of Windows. What am I thinking? They're beta testing a version of iOS support for the Galaxy Gear S2 watch as well. So soon you'll be able to use it from your iPhone as well. But this is a nice feature. You can download the apps straight from the watch. So we move one step closer to the watch replacing the cell phone. And I really think that's going to happen at some point. Not in the near future, but I think it'll be an option for people in the longer distance. Basil's still there. You still got the S Voice to do web search and stuff. I don't know if this is improved yet. I can't wait to play with it. I know on the S2 that I've got on my wrist right now, S Voice has improved tremendously over the Gear 2 I had prior to that. It's still not as good as like Google Now or even Siri, but it's a step in the right direction. So if they continue on that, that'll be great. A lot more exercise stuff built in. And here's the other thing. Over 10,000 apps. They're really playing to this app story because that's been really where they've been weak up till now. 10,000 apps, figure about 10% of them are actually useful, right? That's still a big jump in the right direction. So whereas on the S2 I've had now Uber, and that works great. And I've got Yelp, and that works. I've noticed here they're also adding in Spotify and some of these other apps, Glimpse and all that. So that'll be kind of nice. I'm hoping some of these apps make it back to the S2 as well. So two things so far I'm hoping I get to see, right? So I'm hoping to see some of these new apps get to the S2, and I'm hoping to see Samsung Pay finally get put on the S2. And as you've heard me say before, I'm always concerned with Samsung that when a new device comes out, they seem to forget the devices they made in the past. I'm hoping they don't do it this time. But S3 is definitely the future and where they're going. And that's really about it. The rest of it's all here marketing fluff. Don't need to charge every day. A little break out of the device. So I'm really looking forward to getting my hands on this device and giving it a try. Water resistant, dust resistant. That's nice, but not suitable for swimming or diving. So I guess if you fall in water, you're okay, but I wouldn't go swimming with it. So even though it's the size of a diver's watch, you're not going to want to go diving with it. It'll probably be dead when you come back. But looking to get forward to getting my hands on it. I like the improvements they're announcing. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention that I really wanted to touch on. If you looked at my earlier reviews of the S2 watch, one of the things that bothered me with Samsung was there is no way on the S2 to put a reminder into the watch itself, right? So it was like something they left out. You couldn't use S Voice to say, hey, remind me of something. They've added that back in. There's now a to-do list and a reminder within the watch that syncs with your phone. So it seems like they actually did listen to all the pain points we've had as customers and put them in. Now, I don't know how the larger size is going to be received. I kind of like it, but I've already seen some blogs where people are saying, oh, they hate the size now. So that'll be interesting, especially since Apple released a 38 and a 42. Samsung just came out with a 42 with the S2 and now a 46 with the S3. And you get what you get. Don't pitch a fit. So it'll be interesting to see. Anyway, my first impressions, again, having not seen it, just what I've seen on a press release, in my experience with Samsung watches, I'm trying to give you what I think. Can't give a recommendation one way or the other until I touch it. So looking forward to seeing it at some point. I hope this video helps you. Take care. This is Mike.